Do you want to read that story
Too bad he lives
again to me? Do you want to read that lovely story?
Where's Lago's mum?
after this game, okay? And then we'll be in the loading screen, and then I won't be occupied by anything else.
Oh, okay.
Good, because I want that story over.
Don't worry. We've nailed
Lord
one
of
page
Flies.
out of.
Lord of Flies.
Where are we going?
Yeah, it wasn't even recording
We've nailed
properly.
one page out of 225.
Where are we going?
Anywhere. Just go anywhere.
Have you jumped?
Yeah.
Have you jumped?
Yum yum yum.
Have you jumped?
Yum 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 yum. Yum 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 yum.
Oh, turn around, Largo, turn around.
I'm blue.
Over that way.
Da boo dee da boo da boo dee da boo da boo dee da boo da. Oh no, I'll be
don't.
getting copyright struck. Copyrighted struck. Struck.
Do we want to go
Why
here?
do we get copyrighted?
I'm not gonna make it.
Because I'm gonna be
Mine,
pretty
mine,
good.
mine, 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 mine. No! There's no fucking talking
No,
scar.
because what if I die and I swear and then you'll get in trouble?
No, it's okay.
You don't get
I
in
don't
trouble
get in
for that kind of
trouble.
stuff.
I don't get in trouble. It's a problem. I know.
Oh my goodness, how did you guys get all the way over there?
Because we
Good one.
flew. We glided. We flew. That's. Oh my goodness. There's a guy in with a scar. It's a raven somewhere around here. Be careful.
I
Pretty
hear
sure he
drums.
has a boogie boom.
Oh,
You found him.
Whoa!
You found him. Pretty sure you found him.
Bro, I got so many kills in that. Play, there's a shotgun.
How many kills did you get?
Kill him!
I'm blue, do-dee, dum, do-dee, da. Let me
Kill the John Wick, kill the
sky.
John Wick, kill the John Wick. That's my kill.
What's the job?
Frickin' no, frickin' no.
Oh, just keep moving!
I'm blue, do-dee, do-dee.
Oh, that's Miles throwing.
I'm blue, do-dee, da. Yeah, we killed him.
2 kills, let's go.
Snap, I'm gonna
You're so
die.
dead,
I'm
you're so dead, you're so dead!
I'm so dead. I'm so dead. I'm so not dead. I'm not dead.
Now,
I'm
make
not
me a
dying
promise,
today, bro.
make sure you give Largo the scar, okay?
Why?
It's just me.
'Cause she needs a gun. Not only that, she needs to get a
Hey,
kill.
gun.
That's our mission.
Yeah,
Hey,
This is the
that's
perfect
it.
time to start reading. Guys, this is the perfect time to start reading.
Okay, read. Get this dumb story over with.
Yeah, you might as well, because honestly, I'm not doing this in the game. So, we're gonna restart. We're gonna go back to chapter 1 of
No!
Lord of the Flies by William Golding. Shut up, you live through it
Dude,
once, you can
out
live
here,
through it
out
again.
here.
Okay, do
Shoot
it.
him, shoot him.
Is someone up
Oh,
top?
Okay,
shit. Oh,
the
shit. Oh, shit.
sound
Oh,
of the
shit. Oh, shit.
shell.
Oh, shit. Oh, shit. Oh, shit. There's 2 people attacking me. Need some help. There's 3 freaking people.
Like Mars, you just go for the loot instead of him.
Really? I hate you so much. Wait,
Nah,
let
hate's a strong word.
Largo
It's probably
get him.
like... That was such a dog move.
Yeah.
He's low.
Largo, behind
He's
you.
low. Behind you. Behind you.
Yeah, right there, right there. Kill him, kill him, kill him. Behind you.
Yes! Woo! Yes! You got a kill! You got a kill! Yes! Oh!
Oh my goodness. Fine. Read the story. The happy story.
Let's get a dance party! Oh yeah, G!
Okay, are you
It took
ready?
3 games.
Are you ready, guys?
I got a kill.
Lord of the
Oh my
Flies by
goodness.
William Golding. The Sound of the Shell, Chapter 1.
Oh my goodness.
The boy with fair hair lowered himself down the last few feet of rock and began to pick his way
Okay,
towards the
where are we
lagoon.
going?
Though he had taken off his school sweater and trailed it now from one hand, his grey shirt stuck to him and his hair was plastered to his forehead. All round him, the long scar smashed into the jungle was a bath of heat. He was clambering heavily among the creepers and broken trunks when a bird, vision of red and yellow, flashed upwards with a witch-like cry, and this cry was echoed by another. "Hi," it said. Wait a minute. The undergrowth at the side of the scar was shaken and a multitude of raindrops fell pattering. "Wait a minute," the voice said. I got caught up. The fair boy stopped and jerked his
make it.
stockings with an automatic gesture that made the jungle seem for a moment like the home counties. The voice spoke again. "I can't hardly move with all these creeper things." The owner of the voice came backing out of the undergrowth so that the twigs scratched on a greasy windbreaker. The naked crooks of his knees were plump, caught and scratched by thorns. He bent down,
Thank you, Mouse.
removed the thorns carefully, and turned round.
Oh, good. Yeah, good.
He was shorter than the fair boy and very fat. Page 2. He came forward, searching out safe lodgements for his feet, and then he looked up through thick spectacles. "Where's the man with the megaphone?" The fair boy shook his head. "This is an island. At least I think it's an island. That's a reef out at sea. Perhaps there aren't any grown-ups anywhere." The fat boy looked startled. There was that pilot, but he wasn't in the passenger tube. He was up in the cabin in front. The fair boy was peering at the reef through screwed-up eyes. "All them other kids," the fat boy went on. "Some of them must have got out." "They must have, mustn't they?" The fair boy began to pick his way as casually as possible towards the water. He tried to be offhand and not too obviously uninterested, but the fat boy hurried after him. "Aren't there any grown-ups at all?" "I don't think so." The fair boy said this solemnly, but then the delight of a realized ambition overcame him. In the middle of the scar, he stood on his head and grinned at the reversed fat boy. "No grown-ups." The fat boy thought for a moment. That pilot. The fair boy allowed his feet to come down and sat on the steamy earth. He must have flown off after he dropped us. He couldn't land here, not in a plane with wheels. He was attacked? "He'll be right back. He'll be back all right." The fat boy shook his head. "When we were coming down, I looked through one of them windows. I saw the other part of the plane. There were flames coming out of it." He looked up and down the scar, and this is what the tube done. Fair boy reached out and touched the jagged end of a trunk. For a moment he looked interested. "What happened to it?" he asked. "Where's it got to now?" "The storm dragged it out to sea. It wasn't half dangerous with all them tree trunks falling. There must have been some kids still in it." He hesitated for a moment and spoke again. "What's your name?" "Ralph." The fat boy waited to be asked his name in turn, but this proffer of acquaintance was not made. The fair boy, called Ralph, smiled vaguely, stood up, and began to make his way once more towards the lagoon. The fat boy hung at his shoulder. "I expect there's a lot more of us scattered about. You haven't seen any others, have you?" Ralph shook his head and increased his speed. Then he tripped over a branch and came down with a crash. For him.
Someone's here, sorry.
The fat boy stood by him, breathing hard. "My auntie told me not to run," he explained, "on account of my asthma." Asthma? That's right, can't catch me breath. I was the only boy in our school that had asthma," said the fat boy with a touch of pride.
Motherfucker. Sorry, I'm
That's
sorry.
what I mean.
That's dark.
I'm sorry.
Blue
Miles,
double
they're coming, they're
D,
coming,
And
they're
I've been
coming, they're
wearing-
coming, they're coming. Stop, stop, they're
double
Let me
coming.
touch it right.
Miles!
Double D, stop the story.
And I've been wearing specs since I was 3. He took off his glasses and held them out to Ralph, blinking and smiling, and then starts
You
whacking
better
against
stop.
his grubby
I'm
windbreak.
sorry.
The flies. It's okay. I'm sorry I died. But I got
An
killed.
expression of pain
It's
and
okay.
inward concentration altered the pale contours of his face. He smeared the sweat from his cheeks and quickly adjusted the spectacles on his nose. Them fruit, he glanced around the scar. Them fruit, he said. I expect. He put on his glasses, waded away from Ralph, and
Lord of the
crouched
Flies.
down among the tangled foliage.
Mm.
I'll be out
I
in
know.
just a minute. Ralph disentangled himself cautiously and stole away
So is it about flying or is it about the little
through the
insect that
branches.
called a fly?
No.
Actually,
Insect.
Ask Sissy.
this
Sissy's
is
read it.
Lord of the Flies is about like the fall of
Lord of the
civilization
Rings?
among kids.
Yeah.
So
I have
the
no
title
idea.
kind of makes sense
Miles,
because
I
the
got
kids are the
killed.
flies.
Leave it alone.
I'll be out again in just a minute. Ralph disentangled himself cautiously and stole away through the branches. In a few seconds, the fat boy's grunts were behind him, and he was hurrying towards the screen that still lay between him and the lagoon. He climbed over a broken trunk and was out of the jungle. The shore was fledged with palm trees. He stood or leaned or reclined against the light, and their green feathers were 100 feet up in the air. The ground beneath them was a bank covered with coarse grass, torn everywhere by the upheavals of fallen trees, scattered with decaying coconut palm saplings. Behind this was the darkness of the forest proper, and the open space of the scar. Ralph stood, one hand against the grey trunk, and screwed up his eyes against the shimmering water. Out there, perhaps a mile away, the white surf flicked on a coral reef, and beyond that, the open sea was dark blue. Within the irregular arc of coral, the lagoon was of coral. The lagoon was still as a mountain lake, blue of all shades and shadowy green and purple. The beach between the palm terrace and the water was a thin bow stave. Hey, Clay, could you please mute your mic? Sorry, I can hear the echo and it's kind of annoying.
Don't worry, I've got it on good audio.
Yeah, but I'm trying to read and all I can hear is just my echo and it's making me like jitter for some reason. Okay, where was I? The beach between the palm terrace and the water was a thin bow stave. Endless apparently, for to Ralph's left at the perspectives of palm and beach and water drew to a point at infinity, and always, almost invisible, was the heat. He jumped down from the terrace. The sand was thick over his black shoes, and the heat hit him. He became conscious of the weight of his clothes, kicked his shoes off fiercely, and ripped off each stocking with its elastic garter in a single movement. Then he leapt back on the terrace, pulled off his shirt, and stood there among the skull-like coconuts, green shadows from the palms, and the forest gliding over his skin. He undid the snake clasp on his belt, logged off his shorts and pants, and stood there naked, looking at the dazzling beach on the water. That bitch naked! He was old enough, 12 years and a few months, to have lost the prominent tummy of childhood, and not yet old enough for the adolescence to have made him awkward. You could see now that he might make a boxer, as far as width and heaviness of shoulders went, but there was a mildness about his mouth and eyes that proclaimed no devil. He patted the palm trunk softly, and forced at last to believe in the reality of the island, laughed delightedly again, and stood on his head. He turned neatly onto his feet, jumped down to the beach, knelt, and swept a double armful of sand into a pile against his chest. Then he sat back and looked at the water with bright, excited eyes. Ralph, the fat boy, lowered himself over the terrace and sat down carefully, using the edge as a seat. I'm sorry I've been such a time. Them fruit. What's with the fruit, honestly? He wiped his glasses and adjusted them on his button nose. The frame had made a deep pink V on the bridge. He looked critically at Ralph's golden body and then down at his own clothes. He laid a hand on the end of a zipper that extended down his chest. My auntie. Then he opened the zipper with decision and pulled the whole windbreaker over his head. There! Ralph looked at him sidelong and said nothing. I expect we'll want to know all their names, said the fat boy, and make a list. We ought to have a meeting. Ralph did not take the hint, so the fat boy was forced to continue. I'll read... How many pages are there in this chapter? Right. Yeah, I'll read more pages, okay?
How many more pages?
I don't care what they call me. 3 more pages, because there's 30 pages in this chapter, and I'm not reading that much in just one video.
Okay, yeah.
I don't care what they call me, he said confidently, so long as they don't call me what they used to call me at school. Ralph was faintly interested. What was that exactly? The fat boy glanced over his shoulder, then leaned towards Ralph. He whispered, They used to call me Piggy. Ralph shrieked with laughter. He jumped up. Piggy, Piggy! Ralph, please. Piggy clasped his hands in apprehension. I said I didn't want Piggy, Piggy! Ralph danced out into the hot air of the beach and then returned as a fighter plane, with wings swept back and machine gunned Peggy. I don't even know how to pronounce that word, so you know, screw it. Xiao! He dived into the sand at Piggy's feet and lay there laughing. Piggy! Piggy grinned reluctantly, pleased despite himself at even this much recognition. So long as you don't tell the others. Ralph giggled into the sand. The expression of pain and concentration returned to Piggy's face. Half a sec. He hastened back into the forest. Ralph stood up and trotted along to the right. Here, the beach was interrupted abruptly by the square motif of the landscape. A great platform of pink granite thrust up uncompromisingly through forest and terrace, sand and lagoon, to make a raised jetty 4 feet high. The top of this was covered with a thin layer of soil and coarse grass, and shaded with young palm trees. There was not enough soil for them to grow to any height, and when they reached perhaps 20 feet, they fell and dried, forming a crisscross pattern of trunks, very convenient to sit on. The palms that still stood made a green roof, covered on the underside with a quivering tangle of reflections from the lagoon. Ralph hauled himself onto this platform, noted the coolness and shade, shut one eye, and decided that the shadows on his body were really green. He picked his way to the seaward edge of the platform and stood looking down into the water. It was clear to the bottom and bright, with the efflorescence of tropical weed and coral. Full of tiny glittering fish flicked hither and thither. Ralph spoke to himself, sounding the bass strings of delight. Whizzle!
Yeah, but
What? Hang on, let me read. Beyond the
Sorry.
platform, there was more enchantment. Some act of God, a typhoon perhaps, or the storm that had accompanied his own arrival. had banked sand aside inside the lagoon so that there was a long, deep pool in the beach with a high ledge of pink granite at the further end. Ralph had been deceived before now by the specious appearance of the depth in the beach pool, but he approached this one preparing to be disappointed. But the island ran true to form, and the incredible pool, which clearly was only invaded by the sea at high tide, was so deep at one end as to be dark green. That would actually be nice. I love a pool like that. The water was warmer than his blood, and he might have been swimming in a huge bath. Piggy appeared again, sat on the rocky ledge, and watched Ralph's green and white body enviously. "You can't half swim? Piggy!" Piggy took off his shoes and socks, ranged them carefully on the ledge, and tested the water with one toe. Has anyone actually ever done that? Like, you just go to the water, you just put your toe in, and if it's too cold, you just leave?
No, I usually just run and jump.
I've never
Get it
done
over
that
with.
before. Honestly, I have been to Cape Patterson, and Cape Patterson is a nice little area. It's got a beach with a giant ass rock pool, but the rock pool is so cold. Like, last time I went in there, I slipped on the rocks and fell headfirst into the water. Nearly cracked my skull.
Whereabouts is it?
Cape Patterson, it is in Victoria somewhere. I completely forgot because I don't really pay attention on bus trips.
Oh,
Used to go with my
okay.
school. It's quite a nice location. Okay, where am I? It's hot. What did you expect? I didn't expect nothing. My auntie sucks to your auntie. Ralph did a surface dive and swam underwater with his eyes open. The sandy edge of the pool loomed up like a hillside. He turned over, holding his nose, and a golden light danced and shattered just over his face. Piggy was looking determined and began to take off his shorts. Presently, he was palely and fatly naked.
Batley?
Where am I? Fatly, yeah, it says fatly, Fatly. He tiptoed down the sandy side of the pool and sat there up to his neck in water, smiling proudly at Ralph. "Aren't you going to swim?" Piggy shook his head. "I can't swim. I wasn't allowed. My asthma sucks to your asthma." Piggy bore this with a sort of humble patience. "You can't half swim well." Ralph paddled backwards down the slope, immersed his mouth, and blew a jet of water into the air. Then he lifted his chin and spoke. "I could swim when I was 5. Daddy taught me. He's a commander in the Navy. When he gets leave, he'll come and rescue us." "What's your father?" Piggy flushed suddenly. "Oh, okay. My dad's dead," he said quickly. "And my mum." He took off his glasses and looked vainly for something with which to clean them. "I used to live with my auntie. She kept a sweet shop, which is why he's fat.
Wait.
I used to get ever so many sweets, as many as I liked." "When will your dad rescue us?" "Soon as he can." Piggy rose, dripping from the water, and stood naked cleaning his glasses with a sock. The only sound that reached them now, through the heat of the morning, was the long, grinding roar of the breakers on the reef. "How does he know we're here?" Ralph lolled in the water. Sleep enveloped him like the swathing mirages that were wrestling with the brilliance of the lagoon. "How does he know we're here?" "Because," thought Ralph, because the roar from the reef became very distant. "They tell him at the airport." Piggy shook his head, put on his flashing glasses, and looked down at Ralph. "Not them. Didn't you hear what the pilot said about the atom bomb? They're all dead." Ralph pulled himself out of the water, stood facing Piggy, and considered this unusual problem. Piggy persisted. "This is an island, isn't it?" "I climbed a rock," said Ralph slowly, "and I think this is an island. They're all dead, said Piggy. And this is an island. Nobody don't know we're here. Your dad don't know. Nobody don't know. His lips quivered and the spectacles were dimmed with mist. We may stay here till we die. With that word, the heat seemed to increase till it became a threatening weight, and the lagoon attacked them with a blinding effulgence. Get my clothes, muttered muttered Ralph. Along there. He trotted through the sand, enduring the sun's enmity, crossed the platform, and found his scattered clothes. To put on a grey shirt once more was strangely pleasing. Then he climbed the edge of the platform and sat in the green shade on a convenient trunk. And that's where I'm going to stop reading. Oh, thank you.
Well done.
That was a joyful story.
Wait, were they listening?
Mason was, yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Leave a like if you've enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new around here. Click the notification bell to keep updated with my videos. I'll see you guys on the next video. Bye bye.